The distress beacon came through just as Sergeant Jake Reeves was finishing his third cup of coffee and contemplating the mind-numbing boredom of another patrol shift on Kepler base. The remote frontier outpost sat on the edge of contested space, where 3 different species claimed territorial rights and none of them bothered to actually enforce them most days. "Sergeant, we've got an emergency signal about 2 clicks northeast of the perimeter," came Lieutenant Torres' voice over the comm, "single life sign, unknown species, medical emergency." Jake was already reaching for his field kit before Torres finished speaking. Combat medic instincts didn't pause for bureaucratic considerations like whether the injured party was human, alien, or somewhere in between. "On my way," he replied, shouldering his pack and checking his medical scanner. The readings were strange. Elevated bioelectric activity, cellular degradation patterns he'd never seen before, and what appeared to be some kind of progressive system failure. The hoverbike made quick work of the rocky terrain, and Jake found the source of the beacon in a shallow ravine that provided natural cover from aerial observation. What he found there made him catch his breath. She was beautiful in a way that seemed almost impossible, tall and willowy, with skin that appeared to be made of living crystal, shifting from pale blue to silver as he watched. Her hair fell in waves of what looked like spun starlight, and even unconscious and clearly dying, she possessed an ethereal grace that seemed to bend light around her. Veilthera. Jake had seen pictures in the cultural briefings, but nothing had prepared him for the reality. The Veilthera were one of the oldest species in known space, renowned for their artistry, philosophy, and complete refusal to engage in anything resembling practical politics with younger civilizations. And this one was bleeding out in a ditch on the ass end of nowhere. Jake's scanner confirmed what his eyes told him: multiple penetrating wounds, severe blood loss, and something his equipment identified as cascading cellular breakdown. Whatever that meant, it was happening fast. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me? I'm here to help." Her eyes opened, violet, with flecks of gold that seemed to move like living things. When she spoke, her voice was like music with an accent he couldn't place. "Human," she whispered, and her crystalline skin shifted toward a warmer blue. "You should not, the raiders may return." "Let me worry about the raiders," Jake said, already activating his nanobotic injectors. "What's your name?" "Lyralii." Her breathing was shallow, labored. "You must understand, if you heal me, there are consequences." Jake paused in his preparations. "What kind of consequences?" "My people, we have laws, ancient laws." Her skin was shifting toward alarming shades of gray. "If you save my life with your essence." "Lady, I don't know what you're talking about, but you're dying right now." Jake positioned the nanobotic injectors over her major wounds. "We can discuss ancient laws after I stop you from bleeding to death." The nanobots went to work immediately, sealing wounds and beginning cellular repair. Jake's own biomarkers appeared on his scanner as the microscopic machines carried his genetic signature into her system, facilitating the healing process through biocompatible integration. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Lyralii's skin shifted from gray to vibrant blues and silvers, her breathing stabilized, and the critical warnings on Jake's scanner began shifting to cautionary yellows. "That's better," Jake said, monitoring the readouts. "The nanobots are working. You should be stable enough for transport in about 10 minutes. Lyralii sat up slowly, staring at him with an expression that mixed gratitude with something that looked suspiciously like horror. "What you have done," she said carefully, "is very kind. Also very problematic." "Problematic how?" "Your healing essence, your nanobots carry your biological signature, yes. They have integrated with my cellular structure to facilitate repair." Jake nodded. "Standard combat medic procedure. The nanobots use biocompatible markers to prevent rejection while they work. In Veilthera law, this creates what we call the debt of life." Lyralii's skin was cycling through colors Jake couldn't interpret. When one being's life force becomes permanently integrated with another's for the purpose of preservation, it creates a sacred obligation. "What kind of obligation?" Lyralii looked directly into his eyes, her expression serious. Marriage. Jake blinked. I'm sorry, what? The debt of life can only be resolved through the formal bonding of the two individuals involved. It is not merely cultural tradition, it is biological necessity. Without the bonding ceremony to stabilize the connection your nanobots have created, both of us will suffer progressive cellular breakdown. Jake stared at her, his brain struggling to process what she was saying. Are you telling me that saving your life means I have to marry you? I am telling you that saving my life with your biological essence has created a permanent link between us that must be formalized or we will both die. Her skin had settled into what Jake was beginning to recognize as distressed purple. I am very grateful to be alive, Sergeant Jake Reeves. I am also very sorry that your kindness has created this situation. Jake sat back on his heels, looking at his scanner readings. Sure enough, there were new biomarkers appearing in his own system, traces of Valthera cellular patterns integrating with his baseline human biology. How long do we have, he asked, to complete the bonding? Perhaps 2 of your weeks before the incompatibility becomes dangerous. And if we complete this bonding ceremony? Then we will be married according to the laws of my people, and the biological integration will stabilize permanently. Lyralii's expression was carefully neutral. This is not how I imagined finding a husband. Jake found himself laughing despite the absurdity of the situation. Lady, this is definitely not how I imagined my Tuesday going. Your humor in the face of cosmic irony is refreshing, Lyralii said, and her skin shifted toward warmer colors. Most humans in your position would be significantly more distressed. Give me a few minutes for this to sink in, Jake replied. I might get around to distressed eventually. As if summoned by the mention of complications, his comm unit crackled to life. Sergeant Reeves, report. We're showing some unusual bio-readings from your location. Jake looked at Lyralii, who was now studying him with obvious curiosity. Torres, I'm going to need to speak with the commander. We have a situation here that's unprecedented. How unprecedented? Jake glanced at his scanner, which was now showing 2 life signs that were somehow harmonically synchronized. The kind that's going to require calls to the diplomatic corps. 2 hours later, Jake found himself in the base commander's office trying to explain how a routine medical emergency had somehow resulted in an interspecies marriage contract. Commander Walsh kept staring at the official Valthera cultural database entry for debt of life, as if expecting the words to rearrange themselves into something more reasonable. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Walsh said slowly. Your nanobots created a permanent biological link with Dr. Lyralii's cellular structure, and according to Valthera law, this means you're now engaged. Technically, we're already married, Lyralii corrected gently from her seat beside Jake. The biological integration constitutes the binding itself. The ceremony is simply formal recognition of what has already occurred. Walsh rubbed his temples. And if you don't perform this ceremony? Progressive cellular breakdown leading to death for both parties, Lyralii replied with scientific detachment. The incompatible biological markers will eventually cause systematic organ failure. How long do we have to figure this out? Approximately 13 of your days before the process becomes irreversible, Lyralii consulted what appeared to be a crystalline data pad. Though the initial symptoms will begin manifesting within the next few days. Jake had spent the morning reading everything the base's computer could find about Valthera culture, and most of it had given him a headache. Sir, the cultural files suggest that these marriage bonds aren't just ceremonial. They involve some kind of permanent psychic connection. Not psychic, Lyralii corrected. Bioelectric resonance. Our nervous systems will gradually synchronize, allowing for enhanced empathic communication and shared physiological responses. That sounds like psychic to me, Jake muttered. Your language lacks precision for describing the phenomenon. Think of it as biological Wi-Fi, perhaps. Lyralii's skin shifted to amused blues. Though with considerably more permanence and intimacy than your data networks. Commander Walsh was scrolling through diplomatic protocols on his tablet. Dr. Lyralii, what exactly were you doing in this sector when you were attacked? Xenobiological research. I was studying human settlement patterns and their impact on local ecosystems. Her skin shifted toward more neutral colors. I was, particularly interested in human adaptability and potential for biocompatible integration with other species. Jake stared at her. You were studying human biology? Among other things. Your species demonstrates remarkable flexibility in terms of genetic expression and adaptive capability. I theorized that humans might be uniquely suited for beneficial biological integration with other species. Her expression grew rueful. I did not expect to test this theory personally. So this biological linking thing, it's not something that normally happens. The dead-of-life law exists because such integration is possible with Veilthra physiology, but it requires very specific circumstances. Usually involving emergency medical intervention where one party's life force is directly integrated with another's through advanced biotechnology. Lyralii paused. It is exceedingly rare. I know of perhaps 3 cases in the last 1,000 years. Walsh looked up from his tablet. What happened to those 3 cases? 2 resulted in successful bondings and long, prosperous marriages. 1. Lyralii's skin shifted to uncomfortable purples. 1 refused the bonding ceremony for philosophical reasons. Both parties died within 20 days. The office fell silent except for the hum of environmental systems. Jake found himself studying Lyralii more carefully, the way her emotions played across her crystalline skin, the graceful way she moved despite having been half dead a few hours ago, the obvious intelligence in her violet eyes. Can I ask you something personal? Jake said finally. Given our current situation, I believe personal questions are inevitable. Are you okay with this? I mean, setting aside the biological necessity, how do you feel about being married to a human you just met? Lyralii was quiet for a long moment, her skin cycling through several colors Jake couldn't interpret. That is a complex question, Sergeant Reeves. Jake. If we're married, you can call me Jake. Jake. She smiled, and her skin warmed noticeably. I am grateful to be alive. I am also intellectually fascinated by the biological integration we have achieved. It represents a breakthrough in interspecies compatibility theory that could revolutionize medical treatment across multiple civilizations. That's the scientist answer. What's the personal answer? The personal answer is that I find you remarkably calm and adaptable for someone whose life has just been completely rearranged by cosmic irony. Her skin shifted to what Jake was learning meant amusement. Also, you have very gentle hands for a warrior, and your bioelectric signature is surprisingly harmonious with mine. Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. Is that your way of saying you find me attractive? I am saying that our biological compatibility extends beyond mere survival necessity. Whether that translates to successful emotional partnership remains to be determined. She tilted her head, studying him. What is your assessment of our situation? Jake considered the question seriously. Honestly? You're brilliant, beautiful, and you seem to find my complete cluelessness about your culture entertaining rather than offensive. As arranged marriages go, I could have done a lot worse. Arranged marriage. An interesting framework. Lyralii's expression grew thoughtful. Though I suppose that accurately describes our circumstances. Commander Walsh cleared his throat. While this is all very touching, we have practical issues to address. Dr. Lyralii, what does this bonding ceremony involve? Traditional elements include formal recognition by family representatives, exchange of life pledges, and a bioelectric harmonization ritual to stabilize the integration. She paused. It can be adapted for human customs, but certain elements are biologically necessary rather than merely ceremonial. Family representatives? Jake asked. My father is Commander Thaloran of the Veilthra Deep Space Research Division. He will need to be informed of the situation. Lyraliai's skin shifted to nervous greens. He may have opinions about his daughter's unexpected marriage to a human. Walsh groaned. A Valethora military commander. Perfect. He is actually quite reasonable, for a traditional Valethora male. Though he may require convincing that this bonding is acceptable rather than merely necessary. Lyraliai looked at Jake with something that might have been worry. He will want to evaluate your suitability as a husband. Evaluate how? Traditional challenges. Combat skill, intellectual capability, emotional stability, genetic compatibility. She paused. Though given that we are already biologically bonded, the genetic compatibility portion may be considered satisfied. Jake laughed. Your dad is going to want to fight me, isn't he? Not fight. Test. There is a significant difference. Is there really? Lyraliai's skin cycled through several shades of what Jake was beginning to recognize as her version of nervous laughter. Perhaps that distinction will become clearer when you meet him. Commander Walsh stood up, clearly having reached the limits of his patience with cosmic irony. Dr. Lyraliai, how quickly can your father get here? The Valethora delegation arrived exactly 4 days later in a ship that looked like someone had carved a cathedral out of living crystal and taught it to fly. Jake watched from the observation deck as the vessel settled onto the landing pad with impossible grace, its surfaces shifting through prismatic colors that hurt to look at directly. That's definitely a diplomatic vessel, Commander Walsh observed, joining Jake at the viewport. And probably worth more than our entire base. How can you tell it's diplomatic? See those geometric patterns along the hull? Those are rank markers. Your future father-in-law is apparently very important in Valethora society. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Define very important. According to the cultural database, those markings indicate someone with authority over multiple research divisions and significant political influence. Walsh clapped Jake on the shoulder. Good luck, son. The airlock cycled open to reveal 3 figures in flowing robes that seemed to be cut from the same material as starlight. The lead figure was clearly related to Lyraliai. He shared her crystalline skin and ethereal bearing, though his coloring ran more towards silver and deep blue. He was also significantly taller than any human Jake had ever met, and carried himself with the kind of authority that made experienced soldiers stand up straighter without conscious thought. Commander the Lauren, Lyraliai said, moving forward to greet her father with what appeared to be a formal embrace. Thank you for coming so quickly. Daughter. Thalarin's voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate through the deck plating. Your message was concerning. His violet eyes fixed on Jake with laser intensity. You must be Sergeant Jake Reeves. Sir. Jake snapped to attention, falling back on military protocol when diplomacy failed him. At ease, young warrior. We have much to discuss. Thalarin's skin shifted to colors Jake couldn't interpret. First, however, I must understand the circumstances that led to this unprecedented situation. What followed was the most surreal briefing of Jake's military career. Lyraliai explained the attack, her injuries, and Jake's life-saving intervention with clinical precision while her father listened with the kind of focused attention that suggested he was analyzing every word for deeper meaning. Show me the biocompatibility readings, the Lauren said when she finished. Lyraliai activated her crystalline pad, projecting a holographic display that showed 2 intertwined biological signatures. Jake stared at the readout. His own biomarkers were clearly visible, but they were somehow harmonized with patterns he'd never seen before. Fascinating, the Lauren murmured. The integration is remarkably stable. How do you feel, Sergeant Reeves? Physically. Better than I have in years. Everything seems clearer somehow. More vibrant. Jake paused, trying to articulate something he barely understood. I can sense Lyraliai's emotional state even when she's not in the room. And you, daughter? The same. Jake's presence has a calming effect on my bioelectric patterns. His emotional stability seems to enhance my own physiological responses. Lyraliai's skin shifted to warm blues. The integration has been surprisingly harmonious. The Lauren nodded slowly. This level of biocompatibility is unprecedented between Vaelthera and any other species. The implications for medical treatment and biological research are extraordinary. Sir, Jake said carefully, does this mean you approve of the bonding? Approval is not the relevant question, Sergeant. The biological integration has already occurred, the bonding ceremony is merely formal recognition of an established fact. Thalarin's expression grew more serious. The question is whether you understand the responsibilities you have undertaken. Before Jake could answer, the base's alarm system erupted into urgent wails. All personnel to emergency stations, came Torres' voice over the intercom. Multiple hostile contacts approaching from the asteroid field. Unknown configuration, heavily armed. Jake was already moving toward the armory when Thalarin's voice stopped him. These are the raiders who attacked my daughter. Unknown, sir, but the timing is suspicious. Jake grabbed his combat gear, muscle memory taking over. Lyraliai, you need to get to the secure sections. I think not, she replied, her skin shifting to determined golds. If these are the same raiders, they may be targeting me specifically. All the more reason to stay protected. Jake. Lyraliai's voice carried an authority he hadn't heard before. I am not helpless. My research included combat applications. The first explosions rocked the base as enemy fire began testing their shields. Through the tactical displays, Jake could see 6 ships. Sleek, predatory designs that screamed pirate modification. Those are Korok vessels, the Lauren observed, studying the enemy formations with professional interest. Slavers and technology thieves. They often target researchers for both their knowledge and their biological uniqueness. They were after Lyraliai specifically, Jake realized. Most likely. Vaelthera biological samples command extremely high prices on the black market. Thalarin's skin shifted to dangerous colors. They miscalculated by returning here. The base shuddered under sustained fire. Jake checked his weapon systems and moved toward the defensive positions, but stopped when he felt something strange, a surge of energy that seemed to flow through the biological link he shared with Lyraliai. What was that? Shared physiological response, Lyraliai replied, moving to the tactical station. Our bioelectric fields are synchronizing under stress. Jake felt it again. Enhanced reflexes, improved visual acuity, a sense of tactical awareness that went beyond his normal capabilities. Is this permanent? Unknown. We are entering uncharted territory. Lyraliai's fingers danced over the tactical controls with surprising expertise. The raiders are using phase shift technology to avoid our targeting systems. Can you counter it? Perhaps. If you can provide covering fire while I modify the sensor arrays. She looked at him directly. This will require trust. What kind of trust? The kind where you allow our biological link to guide your combat responses while I guide the technical countermeasures. Jake stared at her, this woman he'd known for 4 days who was asking him to trust her with his life in ways that went beyond normal human experience. Do it, he said. The next 30 minutes were the strangest combat experience of Jake's career. Fighting while bioelectrically linked to Lyraliai was like having a tactical computer that could predict enemy movements and suggest optimal responses directly to his nervous system. He found himself making shots that should have been impossible, moving with reflexes that felt enhanced beyond human normal. Meanwhile, Lyraliai worked some kind of technical magic that stripped away the raiders' stealth capabilities, leaving them exposed to the base's defensive systems. Targets locked, she announced. Firing solutions optimized. The base's weapons array spoke with authority, and 4 of the 6 raider ships simply ceased to exist. The remaining 2 broke off their attack and fled back toward the asteroid field. Well, said Commander Walsh, entering the tactical center as the all-clear sounded, that was educational. Jake realized he was still feeling the aftereffects of the bioelectric link. Heightened awareness. Jake had attended military ceremonies, state functions, and even a few traditional human weddings, but nothing had prepared him for the complexity of preparing for a Veilthra bonding ritual. The base's largest conference room had been transformed into something that looked like the intersection of a laboratory, a chapel, and a light show. The crystalline formations focus bioelectric energy, Lyralii explained, adjusting what appeared to be geometric sculptures that hummed with barely audible harmonics. They will help stabilize the integration during the formal bonding. And the light patterns? Traditional aesthetic elements. Also functional, the specific frequencies help synchronize nervous system responses. She paused in her arrangements to look at him seriously. Jake, are you certain about this? Once the ceremony is complete, the biological integration will be permanent and irreversible. Jake considered the question he'd been asking himself for the past week. In 7 days, he'd gone from routine patrol duty to saving an alien woman's life to fighting alongside her in perfect synchronization. The woman he was about to marry was brilliant, beautiful, and apparently capable of enhancing his combat effectiveness by 30% through sheer bioelectric compatibility. Lyralii, can I ask you something? Of course. Yesterday, when we were fighting the raiders, how did that feel to you? Her skin shifted through several colors before settling on warm golds. Like finding the other half of a conversation I had been having with myself for my entire life. Like discovering that some problems are easier to solve with two minds working in harmony than with one mind working alone. That's what I thought. Jake moved closer to her, noting how her bioelectric field seemed to calm his own nervous energy. I've never felt as complete as I have this week. Is that the biological integration talking, or something else? I have been wondering the same thing. Lyralii's expression grew thoughtful. Dr. Vesson, my colleague who will officiate the ceremony, believes that biological compatibility of this magnitude requires underlying psychological and emotional compatibility to function properly. Meaning the nanobots could only create this level of integration between individuals who were already compatible on multiple levels. The biological bonding may have been triggered by medical necessity, but it succeeded because we are genuinely suited to each other. Before Jake could respond, Commander Lauren entered the room wearing what appeared to be formal robes made of woven starlight. The preparations are complete. Are you ready to proceed? Jake looked around the transformed conference room, where a handful of human personnel sat alongside Veilthra delegation members, all wearing expressions of fascination mixed with uncertainty. Commander Walsh was present in his dress uniform, looking like a man attending a ceremony he didn't entirely understand but was determined to support. As ready as someone can be for something they've never experienced before, Jake replied. The ceremony itself was unlike anything Jake had imagined. Dr. Vesson, an elderly Veilthra whose skin showed patterns Jake was learning indicated advanced age and wisdom, began with what appeared to be both traditional vows and scientific explanations of the biological processes they were formalizing. Jake Reeves, Dr. Vesson intoned, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate through the crystalline formations, do you accept the life bond with Lyralii Lauren, understanding that this connection will enhance and change you in ways that cannot be undone? I do, Jake replied, surprised by how certain he sounded. Lyralii Lauren, do you accept the life bond with Jake Reeves, understanding that this connection will enhance and change you in ways that cannot be undone? I do, Lyralii replied, her skin shifting to radiant colors that made the crystalline formations around them chime softly. Then let the formal integration begin. What followed was part ceremony, part medical procedure, and part light show. Jake found himself connected to what appeared to be a bioelectric monitoring system while similar equipment was attached to Lyralii. The crystalline formations began to glow more brightly, and Jake felt the now familiar sensation of bioelectric resonance amplifying. But this time it was different, stronger, more complete. Instead of the tactical enhancement he'd experienced during combat, Jake felt his consciousness expanding to include awareness of Lyralii's thoughts and emotions. Not reading her mind, exactly, but sensing her presence in ways that went beyond physical proximity. "Jake." Lyraliai's voice came through the connection, though her lips hadn't moved. "Can you hear this?" "I can hear you," he replied through the same impossible channel. "This is incredible." The ceremony continued around them, but Jake was focused on the extraordinary sensation of shared consciousness. He could feel Lyraliai's wonder at the successful integration, her joy at the completion of the bonding, and underneath it all, a deep sense of rightness that seemed to emanate from both of them simultaneously. "Is this what married life will be like?" he asked through their connection. "The bioelectric resonance will stabilize at a lower intensity," she replied, and he could sense her amusement. "Though we will always maintain some level of empathic connection. Think of this as the maximum setting, *. Good, because this might be a little overwhelming for everyday conversation, *. Dr. Vessen's voice brought them back to the external ceremony. "The integration is complete and stable. By the laws of both species and the evidence of biological harmony, I declare Jake Reeves and Lyraliai the Lauren formally bonded." The crystalline formations chimed in perfect harmony, the bioelectric equipment powered down, and Jake found himself looking at his wife, his actual wife, who was glowing with colors that spoke of happiness and deep contentment. "How do you feel?" she asked aloud, her skin shifting through gentle blues and silvers. "Like I just discovered a new sense I didn't know I was missing," Jake replied honestly. "Also like I could probably run a marathon while solving complex equations and carrying on 3 separate conversations. The enhancement effects will moderate as your system adjusts to the permanent integration," Dr. Vessen explained. "Though you will find that your cognitive and physical capabilities remain somewhat elevated." Commander Walsh approached them with an expression of professional curiosity mixed with personal amusement. "Congratulations, both of you. Jake, you're now officially the first human to marry into Valephara nobility." "Nobility?" Jake looked at Lyraliai in surprise. "My father's rank carries certain hereditary implications," she replied, her skin shifting to what Jake was learning meant embarrassment. "I may have neglected to mention that our family lineage includes several significant political positions." "Dr. Lyraliai," the Lauren said, joining their conversation, "you are now Dr. Lyraliai Reeves, according to human custom. Though you may retain your research credentials under your original name if you prefer." "Actually," Lyraliai said thoughtfully, "I rather like the idea of taking Jake's name. It symbolizes the new identity we're creating together." Jake felt a warm surge of emotion through their connection, not just from Lyraliai, but somehow from himself, reflected back and amplified. "Mrs. Reeves," he said experimentally. "I like the sound of that," she replied, her skin cycling through happy colors. The reception that followed was a unique blend of human military tradition and Valephara cultural elements. Jake found himself trying to explain human wedding customs to curious Valephara guests while learning about Valephara bonding traditions that went back thousands of years. "The biological integration you've achieved," Dr. Vessen explained during dinner, "represents a breakthrough in interspecies compatibility theory. With your permission, I would like to document the process for future research." "Future research?" Jake asked. "There are several other species whose biology might be compatible with similar integration procedures. Your success opens possibilities for medical treatment, enhanced cognitive function, and improved cooperation between species." Lyraliai leaned closer to Jake, her excitement obvious through both their connection and her shifting skin colors. "We could be the first of many such partnerships. Imagine the implications for diplomacy, for scientific collaboration, for medical advancement. So our accidental marriage might help other people. Our accidental marriage might change the course of interspecies relations across the galaxy," she replied. "Though I prefer to think of it as a happy coincidence rather than an accident." Later that evening, Jake found himself alone with Lyraliai in quarters that had been hastily expanded to accommodate 2 people and what appeared to be several pieces of Valephara technology he didn't recognize. "So," he said, settling beside her on what had formerly been his single-occupancy bed, "we're married." "We are indeed." Her skin was cycling through gentle, content colors. Any regrets? About marrying a brilliant xenobiologist who can enhance my combat effectiveness and apparently comes with nobility perks I didn't know about? Jake considered the question seriously. None whatsoever. You. About being bonded to someone who saved my life, fought beside me with perfect coordination, and whose bioelectric signature harmonizes with mine in ways that most Vale'thra only dream of achieving? She smiled. None whatsoever. Jake felt their connection settle into what seemed like a more sustainable level, still present, still enhancing, but no longer overwhelming. What happens now? Now we begin our life together. The base commander has approved my request for permanent assignment here as a xenobiology research coordinator. My father has arranged for advanced equipment to be shipped from Vale'thra research stations. She paused. And we continue to figure out what it means to be married to someone whose thoughts and emotions you can sense directly. That might take some getting used to. Perhaps. Though I find that I like being able to sense your emotional state. It makes me feel. She searched for the right word, less alone than I have ever felt. Jake reached for her hand, marveling at how natural the gesture felt despite everything that made their relationship unprecedented. Lyralii? Yes. I know this started because of medical necessity and ancient laws, but I want you to know that if I had to choose, if I could go back and make this decision freely, I would choose you. 6 months after their bonding ceremony, Jake stood in the newly constructed xenobiology research facility attached to Kepler Base, watching his wife conduct what appeared to be a three-way conversation with a computer, a holographic display, and 2 off-world researchers via quantum communication link. The transformation of the remote outpost into a cutting-edge research station had been remarkable, but not as remarkable as the transformation in his own life. The cellular integration patterns are holding stable across all test subjects, Lyralii was saying, her skin shifting to excited golds as she manipulated complex biological data. We're seeing successful biocompatibility matches in approximately 60% of human Vale'thra pairings, with moderate success rates in human Altarian and human Cerulean combinations. Jake no longer needed to watch her skin colors to read her emotional state. Their bioelectric connection had stabilized into something that allowed constant low-level empathic awareness without being overwhelming. Right now, he could sense her satisfaction with the research results mixed with anticipation about something she hadn't shared with him yet. Dr. Reeves, came Commander Walsh's voice from behind him, do you have a moment? Jake turned to find his commanding officer approaching with what appeared to be official documentation and an expression of barely contained amusement. What can I do for you, sir? Well, for starters, you can explain how your wife managed to convince Galactic Command to redesignate this base as a Class A research facility with expanded diplomatic status. Walsh handed him the official orders. According to this, Kepler Base is now the center for interspecies biological compatibility research, with a permanent staff of 50 researchers from 12 different species. Jake scanned the documents, feeling Lyralii's pride and excitement through their connection even though she was still engaged in her research call. I think my wife has been busy while I wasn't paying attention. Your wife has been revolutionizing interspecies medicine and diplomacy while you weren't paying attention, Walsh corrected. Do you realize that 3 different species have requested formal alliance negotiations based on the medical breakthrough you two represent? Sir. Jake, the biological integration you and Lyralii achieved isn't just scientifically significant, it's politically significant. The possibility of enhanced biocompatibility between species opens doors for cooperation that previously didn't exist. Walsh's expression grew more serious. Command wants to offer you a promotion and permanent assignment as liaison coordinator for the expanded facility. Before Jake could respond, Lyralii appeared at his side with the fluid grace that had become familiar over their months together. Jake, I need to share something with you. What is it? He asked, though he was already sensing excitement and nervousness through their connection. The biological compatibility research has yielded an unexpected result. Her skin was cycling through colors that Jake had learned meant she was processing complex emotions. Dr. Vesson believes that our integration has achieved something that was theoretically possible but never documented. Which is successful reproductive compatibility. She paused, watching his expression carefully. Jake, I'm pregnant. The words hit Jake like a physical force. Through their bioelectric connection, he felt Lyraliai's joy, her uncertainty about his reaction, and underneath it all, a deep sense of wonder at the life they had created together. Pregnant, he repeated, his brain struggling to process the implications. We're going to have a baby. We're going to have the first known human Veilthera hybrid child in recorded history, Lyraliai corrected, her skin shifting to amused blues. Dr. Vesson is beside himself with scientific excitement. Commander Walsh was staring at both of them with an expression that suggested he was rapidly reaching the limits of his ability to process unprecedented developments. A hybrid child. Between human and Veilthera. The biological integration that saved my life has apparently created genetic compatibility where none should exist, Lyraliai explained. Our child will carry genetic material from both species, potentially with enhanced capabilities from both lineages. Jake reached for Lyraliai's hand, marveling at how the simple contact still enhanced their bioelectric connection. How do you feel about this? Terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, she replied honestly. This child will be unique in galactic history. The responsibility is somewhat overwhelming. But I cannot imagine having this experience with anyone other than you. Her skin shifted to the warm, content colors that Jake had learned meant deep happiness. Our child will be evidence that biological barriers between species are not as absolute as we once believed. Through their connection, Jake felt his own emotions reflected and amplified, wonder at the life they had created, concern about the challenges their child would face, and underneath it all, profound love for the woman who had transformed his life in ways he never could have imagined. Commander, Jake said, still holding Lyraliai's hand, I accept the promotion and permanent assignment. Even though it means your child will grow up in the spotlight of galactic attention. Jake looked at Lyraliai, sensing her thoughts through their connection. Especially because of that. If our family is going to be a symbol of interspecies cooperation, we want to make sure we do it right. 3 months later, Jake found himself in the same observation deck where he had first watched Thalarin's ship arrive, but this time he was holding his infant daughter while Lyraliai recovered from what Dr. Vesson had called the most medically fascinating birth in recorded history. Baby Elena, named for Lyraliai's grandmother and Jake's mother, was small, perfectly formed, and possessed the most extraordinary eyes Jake had ever seen. They shifted color like her mother's skin, but with patterns that seemed uniquely her own. She's beautiful, Commander Walsh said, approaching carefully. How is Lyraliai? Recovering well. The birth was complicated by the fact that no one really knew what to expect from a hybrid pregnancy, but both mother and daughter are healthy. Jake adjusted his hold on Elena, who was making soft sounds that seemed to harmonize with the base's background hum. Dr. Vesson says she's showing enhanced bioelectric activity even as a newborn. Enhanced how? Watch this. Jake moved closer to Lyraliai's bedside, where his wife was resting but alert. The moment Elena came within range of her mother's bioelectric field, the baby's eyes brightened and she made happy sounds that seemed to resonate through both parents' nervous systems. She's connecting to both of your bioelectric signatures, Walsh observed with wonder. She's going to grow up with enhanced empathic abilities. Among other things, Lyraliai said softly, reaching up to touch her daughter's tiny hand. Dr. Vesson believes she may possess cognitive and physical capabilities that exceed both human and Veilthera norms. Jake felt Elena's small fingers wrap around his larger one and experienced something he'd never felt before, a bioelectric connection that was different from his bond with Lyraliai, gentler but somehow more fundamental. His daughter was already linking to both her parents' enhanced biology. What happens now? Walsh asked. Now we raise our daughter while continuing our research into interspecies compatibility. We help other couples achieve successful biological integration. We serve as ambassadors for the possibilities that exist when different species choose cooperation over isolation. Lyraliai's skin shifted to determined colors. And we prove that love can transcend biological boundaries. Jake looked down at Elena, who was studying his face with eyes that seemed far too knowing for a newborn. You know, 6 months ago I was a combat medic on a boring frontier assignment.